Here I go again, here I go again. I'm in Los Angeles, I just
a 16-0 regular season against the Giants. Obviously, you can see we blew that team straight out of the fucking water. Not even close, 35-0. So now we're on to the year-end recap. First, we'll take a look at the weekly awards and who won those throughout this entire season. Obviously, I think Noah Dawkins is going to win it this week, and I think Steven Sims is going to win it for this week 17. We can take a look at that once we're done with this recap. But Noah Dawkins won it last week, the week prior to that, the week prior to that. Dan won it week 11 with 5 sacks and a forced fumble, which was outstanding at that safety position. Noah won it again, so he's won it like 4 or 5 times already. Mark Fields actually won it, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. I don't even know who we played week 8, but that's outstanding. Noah won it, and Steven won it. 3 catches, 202 for 2 touchdowns. That's outstanding. And then Noah with 7 sacks, which is ridiculous. Then Noah again with 4 sacks. Steven with 10 catches, 283 and a touchdown. That's really good. And then that was the cap for that. So Steven won it a few times. Noah Dawkins won it a lot. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and probably 7. So he won it like say 6 or 7 times out of 17 weeks. Well, 16 weeks technically, because one's a bye. That's pretty outstanding. And then Steven Sims won it like three times, I think. 2 times. With Mark Fields winning it once with an outstanding game with two forced fumbles. So looking at free agency, we'll see that we didn't re-sign J.J. Nelson. Well, let's look at his player card. We'll view his contract, see if he's on a 1 or 2 year. He's actually on, I think, yeah, he's on a 1 year. So we'll look. Yeah, he's going to have to get released this season because I'm not going to sign him to a 15-year or $15 million deal like he's going to want, and I can't sign anybody over 77 or over 70 overall in free agency. So JJ will walk. He hasn't really contributed to the team at all this year, which is a little bit sad, but we've just had a lot of other people step into the role that he filled last year of like Emmanuel Hall really was the one that stepped into his role of being that nice secondary receiver with Steven Sims being our breakout number 1. Then obviously there's Dan, who we will look to re-sign this offseason, who we kept under 70 overall for that purpose of re-signing him into his third year. If he goes into age 24 during this offseason, then he will be signed until age 31, which we'll look to definitely do. He's a superstar, really highly developed, so we'll look to actually get him back on this team next year. Emmanuel Hall, obviously our best secondary option, had over 1,000 yards catching, had probably about half a dozen receiving touchdowns, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Also age 23. If he goes into age 24 during this offseason, then he'll be re-signed at least until age 30, maybe 31. So pretty much encapsulate these 2 contracts on 7-year deals, should encapsulate their entire professional careers, or at least the majority of it. Mark Fields, who's a cornerback playing safety, we'll definitely look to get him on a 7-year max, taking him also to age 30. Really outstanding, went well over 30 sacks for this season. Breakout safety, along with Dan, who is actually one of our team captains. So we'll look to bring that back. KJ, we'll definitely look to bring him back. He hasn't contributed a whole lot yet, but look to him being in a bigger role next year with possibly Khalifi Raymond being gone and definitely J.J. Nelson being gone. So he might step into that 3rd or 4th man role for us. Well, definitely 3rd if we get Hall back. But Yeah, that's where we're looking at for that. So a couple defensive players and a couple big offensive players and a couple big defensive players looking to get re-signed this offseason. Andrew Beck will look to bring back on a 7-year, and then that'll take him past his 30s. So we'll look to bring him back, hopefully as a second or third option if we can get somebody better on this team. Obviously, he's pretty good, but a little bit under the speed threshold that I'd like, around like 85 to 90. But he's a good secondary option. Grant Haley will look to bring back as probably like a third or fourth string cornerback, but we'll look to put him on a max deal as well. 7 years. Jamal Wiltz will look to put on 7 years. Andrew Vollert will probably sign to a 7, but he probably won't live out that length of that contract. He might be a good second or third option on this team as well. Nazir will look to sign to a 7-year, and he'll probably actually be able to fulfill that on this team. D-tackle is one of those things that we don't really utilize a whole lot, but Nazir Jones being at that 70 overall, we'll look to bring him back, even being 25. If we can get him on a 7, they usually don't start deteriorating till year 33 to 35. So if we can sign him till year 32, then that'd be great. Yeah, definitely look to bring him back on a 7-year deal. Jimmy Moreland. Jimmy Moreland's one of those guys. He'll be a free agency. He'll be a decision that we hold off until free agency. Not really a high contributor on this team, but he could be a solid backup. So we might look to get him on a 7-year, or maybe just possibly let him walk. Kevon Seymour, a little bit of a similar simulation or situation. He's a year older. We'd only be able to use him until like year 30. They start to drop off about 29 or 30 in terms of speed. So we'd really only have him realistically for 3 or 4 years, along with Jimmy Moreland. So these two will be free agency decisions, but we'll probably look to replace those two with guys who are younger that we can get on 7-year maxes and actually develop throughout the course of a career. Corey Grant, I don't foresee him returning to this team, even though we do have him on that 70 overall. And he doesn't, I don't plan on taking him over that, just to keep the option of him returning to this team open. But if we do re-sign him, a max 2 or 3 year deal will probably be about it, just as a second or third string backup on this team. Matt Lacoste, he's another free agency decision that we'll look into getting players that are younger, obviously players that are faster than him, to really move up in the ranks in terms of our tight end. But you know, he might actually be returning to this team if there's nothing we like there, and there's nothing that we grab in the free agency, then he might make the 53-man roster as a result of that. But I don't foresee us bringing back all 3 of those tight ends. I think him being the oldest leaves him open. Yeah, so he's the oldest, so that leaves him open to being the least likely to come back on this tight end depth chart. Hassan, another guy along with Nazir Jones, who's 25, almost at that 70. We'll look to bring him back on a 7-year and make those 2 guys our stable starting 2 DTs. And this team really only uses 2 defensive tackles at a time anyway. So yeah, we'll look to bring him back, or possibly look at options in the free agency in terms of replacing him. Cedric Woods, I'm not sure if he's on a 7-year. I don't believe he is. He might be. No, he's not. We will actually look to bring him back this offseason. He's still 23, so if we could sign him to a 7-year, like a 7-year minimum extension, he would definitely be a key backup and potentially starter later in the future. Along with him and Bryant, who are both safeties that don't play safety, but depending on how free agency shakes out and this roster shakes out throughout the offseason, then he might potentially be a starter. But yeah, I'll definitely look to bring Cedric back on a 7-year deal, carrying him to age 30 or 31. Alex Redmond, he's just an offensive lineman, a backup. It's really another wait and see kind of situation with him. Not keen on. He's not a real important part of this team. He's more like a fatigue backup and a potential injury guy, which we don't have injuries on, so he really hasn't received a whole lot of snaps this offseason, or this regular season. So, but he's still only 25. We could get him on a 7-year and carry him into age 30. And they really don't deteriorate. They deteriorate about the same rate as defensive tackles, about age 33 to 35. So, I mean, we could bring him back as a career backup, along with Daniel Brunskill. Potentially bring these two back up, just to back up our starting offensive linemen. And then, obviously, we'll have a bunch of rookies that will look to cut and get on long-term deals, so that way we can start upgrading them. We can look over here. Dan, if we're able to bring him back, he'll be about an 88, potentially a 90 coming into next season, so we'll definitely look to bring him back. Manuel Hall, same sort of deal. We'll definitely look to bring him back to be our solid number 2 behind Steven Sims, and he'll be an 82. I don't see him going anything over an 85 this postseason, so yeah, he'll probably be about an 82, 83 at the most coming into next season, so we'll look to re-sign him. Grant Haley, our third string cornerback behind Obi Melifonwu. We'll definitely look to bring him back and probably move him into that secondary position, since he'll be about a 79 or an 80 overall if we're able to re-sign him. Mark Fields, same situation. He'll be a 77 overall, 77 to 79 overall safety, and we'll probably actually move him to that position next year. Officially, he's still listed as cornerback, but we'll look to move him into that free safety position next season, assuming we can secure him. Jimmy Moreland, he would be a 77 along with Kayvon Seymour. I don't foresee them going up to 78. I've had them on hold for about 2 seasons now. 78, they'd be really good backups on this team. So potentially bringing them back might be on the docket. If we could secure them early and then, see what else shakes out, they could definitely make this roster. And then bring in, obviously I don't like to draft cornerbacks just because a big part of what a cornerback does is speed, and it's really hard to determine that based on draft numbers and combine numbers. So, potentially, these guys could be coming back at about 77 overall each. So, they could be crucial backups on this team. Obviously, KJ will be a 75. Hopefully, we're able to sign him long-term to be a 3rd or 4th string receiver, just to add depth. Vollert could be a 74 if we bring him back. Now, left tackle, Charles Clark. He's one of those offensive linemen that we drafted really high this year. Really high on all the linemen we drafted this year. So he's already at that 70, so we'll look to cut him and bring him back on a 7-year deal. So assuming that we can bring him back, he'll be about a 73 or 74. Matt Lacoste, he probably won't come back, but potentially could re-sign him early, just be a relief backup in case we draft somebody else. Jamal Wiltz, he would be like a 4th or 5th string cornerback, assuming we bring him back. Andrew Beck, the same thing. He'd be a little over 70 if we bring him back, deciding that there's nobody better in the draft. Brandon Bryant, he's actually one of those players who I believe is on a 7-year deal, but he's one of those players that's not going to be very highly touted. Yeah, he's already on a 7-year deal, but he's only, he's only like 20. He's only like 24, so we might look to cut him and re-sign him to a new 7-year deal, so that way we can carry him into his 30s. Obviously, he's just going to be a backup safety, assuming that we don't get anybody else. Justin Hardy, another one of those old cornerbacks. I don't assume him, or he might be old. I can't quite remember. 26, so yeah. Don't look for Justin Hardy to return to this team. Nazir Jones, obviously, we'll keep him under that 70 as we look to re-sign him this offseason. So that's kind of like the off-season look in terms of players that are already on this team. Now, towards the end of scouting for this team, in terms of the end of the regular season, looking where we're going to scout. I scouted a bunch of tight ends. Haven't really found anything that I like here, obviously. Alante Paul might be it, or Travis Strong might be it. But I don't really foresee us picking up a tight end in this draft. Hopefully we get something better than that in the free agency. The speed on these guys can vary as well. I don't think combine numbers are out. No, they'll be out after the Super Bowl. So possibly he's a very low possibility, assuming that a lot of the other guys that we have on this team get taken. Elias Hill, we'll star him. He might be a guy that we looked at on this team, and I've actually been scouting the undraftable talent. In left guard, I actually found a really good one. We can just mark these linemen as they might be really good. But undrafted talent, Mike Bobo, he is projected to go undrafted, but he's actually first-round talent, and he's 22. He's projected mid-first rounder, so a pretty high first-round pick. So we'll look to actually sign him a little bit late. If he falls into the third or fourth round, we'll definitely pick him up, seeing as how he's untouted talent. Haven't really finished scouting all these centers, but we'll definitely scout all these linemen. Look to bring in some linemen just as backups and develop some depth at linemen. Obviously, I could mark this guy and the power guy. And there's a 7th rounder that's projected first, and he's probably projected, yeah, another mid-round pick, and he's actually 21, so I might look to draft him over the other guy just because he's actually projected to get drafted. I'll probably draft him 3rd or 4th round if he falls in our lap. Haven't really scouted anything other than that and cornerbacks, which I don't trust their speed. And I don't have a first-round pick, so he's projected early, so he'll probably just fall, and he's 24 anyway, so he's a little bit old. And I've scouted a few unscoutables in the back end of this draft, and there's nothing really worth mentioning. Obviously, a few high draftable safeties. I'm actually fine with where we're at in terms of safeties, so I won't look to really move up for those guys, seeing as how we've already got so much a talent that's projected first round, that's predicted to go late or undrafted. We might just look to draft those. So that's that for the college scouting and the free agency. Now on to how we performed this season. Obviously, you can see the standings in this division. We had the best division in the NFL, us going 16-0, Eagles and Cowboys both going over 500, and then the Giants with that last game putting them just under 500. Yeah, we would have had a chance to finish 500. But we can see how the standings look here at the end of the regular season. Who made it, who didn't. Obviously, I don't think these are over yet, seeing as how some teams probably haven't played. But just to give you guys a look, we've locked up a first-round bye. The Ravens will probably lock up a first-round bye along with the Saints. The Chiefs will probably lock that up. I think 2 of these are in the same division. I think it's the Bengals and the Chiefs possibly. It's the AFC West. No, it's the Raiders and the Chiefs. So one of those teams will actually be a really, really good bye team. That team that won't get the bye. Probably the Raiders. And then a lot of these teams down here, we'll see how that shakes up. Now, I don't foresee the Eagles or the Cowboys making the playoffs, but that's also a potential, seeing if some of these teams lose. The Falcons have had a really good season despite having kind of a lackluster roster. So that's how the playoff picture is looking. In terms of stats, we finished a little bit mediocre. Passing, we finished 7th, probably top 10, barring whatever else. Well, actually, we can sim to the next week and see the full playoff picture to the wild card week and see the regular season stats as they finished out. So now on to this week, you can see Sims won his 3rd player of the week with 6 catches, 263, receiving touchdown, and then that fumble at the very end of the game. And then obviously Noah Dawkins with 10 sacks, which is ridiculous. And then we can see more of the playoff picture. So the Eagles actually finished 800, and the Cowboys actually finished 97, which is pretty good. This is actually a really competitive division with the Eagles and the Cowboys being really, really tough teams to play. So now we can see that we walked up a first round bye. The Ravens have. The Chiefs actually didn't. But they still made the playoffs along with the Raiders, the Saints, the Panthers, who I figured would. The Falcons finished with 10 wins, and the Bengals did. So the Bucs just missed out on the playoffs due to their conference and division. The Bills actually made it, which they're a pretty good team, so I assumed, yeah, they would make it. The Texans made it, and the Cowboys just missed it, which that's heartbreaking for the Cowboys. The Jets finished 8-7, which is shocking. 8-7-1. Shocking that they had that many wins. So now we can take a more accurate look at the statistics. We finished 12th in passing with a little over 4,000. 16th with 29 touchdowns. Rushing, Corey Grant ended up with 7 touchdowns, putting him at 24th. And then obviously Steven Sims finished first with 15 touchdowns. For that, we can take a little bit more of an in-depth look. We're just going to stick with our team. Tyree only finished with 1 completion and 1 pass all year, which, didn't utilize him a lot for passing. Just over 4,000 yards, 261 for a little under 400, 29-14, which is probably an improvement on last year, finishing with twice as many touchdowns as picks, which isn't bad for, we had like a 6 games where we had no turnovers, but some of the games where we did, it was just piling upon piling. One game we had like 3 or 4, which was just awful. Finishing with 65%, which, that's pretty good considering the average is 250 a game, which is pretty good, and an improvement upon last season in 108, which is really good for a season-long rating. A little over 10 yards with the 80 long. Sacked 52 times, which is probably, I would assume, is really high. We can see who finished as the best quarterbacks here in terms of touchdowns. We didn't finish anywhere close to the top of the list for passing touchdowns. Jacob East with just 29. And we can see where 14 picks ranked on the list. Third, which is pretty high. Trubisky had a terrible season, throwing a lot of picks. 65 is probably about average in terms of throwing percentage. Lamar Jackson finished really high along with Russell and Deshaun. So 3 scrambling quarterbacks finished the highest on that list. And we probably finished right around, probably about average. So a lot of quarterbacks being in that 65 to 70 range. So yeah, probably a little bit below average. 250 actually put us near the top half of the league in terms of passing yards. The 108 we'll see based on legitimate quarterbacks. Lamar finished with an insane 130, which is pretty close to a perfect passer rating for the entire season. You see he had 38 touchdowns with 6 picks. Outstanding, just under 4,000 yards. Dak Prescott also finished with really high, just a touchdown under Lamar. And then down here a little bit will probably be us, 108, which seems pretty good, but seems to be just a little above average this season. Yards per attempt, you'll see some quarterbacks up here. Obviously, Clay Kelly's not a legitimate pick, seeing as he only threw 1 completion. But we're at the top of that list with Lamar being very quickly behind, and then some of these falling back. So we actually finished pretty good on top of the list for yards per attempt. 80 long, that's probably not even close to the longest. Lamar actually had a really amazing season. 80, and that's top 10, so not terrible. Sacked 52 times. I actually seen somebody else get Daniel Jones got sacked 66, 10 of those coming in that last game. So he, on average, he probably would have finished probably about 60, maybe in a normal season. I don't know how many times we sacked him in the first time, but yeah, finishing tied for second, a 3-way tie with Carson and Joe Burrow. So I thought we did terrible protecting our quarterback this year, but So did a lot of other teams. A lot of sacks to go around this season. Downs played. We had about an average offense probably. No, actually we had the slowest offense. Obviously we play a lot less than the other people, but now we can go see a little bit more receiving. Let's just go back to our team. Not to get mixed up in all these stats, but Steven Sims had a really good year, not even being our highest receiving. Will Ty actually eked ahead in that. But yeah, really good year for our running backs, getting 20 catches between them. 22 with him getting a 1. Spread the ball out pretty good this year. Our tight ends caught about 90 balls. Receivers caught about 120. And our running backs caught about 22. But yeah, spread the touchdowns out. Andrew Voller got a couple. Will Ty only finished with 6, which is out little below what I thought he would have. Manuel Hall also finishing with 6, and then obviously our star wide receiver, Steven Sims getting 15, which is that's pretty good. Both Hall and Sims had an 80-yard long touchdown, probably out of that PA wheel shot. Blocking, obviously, you can see our backups just got 1 snap through a 16-game season. So yeah, they're not super crucial. Von Mims will be a guy that we look to start next year potentially. I think he's at like a 68 overall, 65. So, but he's star dev, and he's I assume he's super young. Yeah, he's 21. So might be looking to add him to the starting lineup next year. Bring him back on a max deal. John Runyon. Having the best season out of all our starters, and he's a rookie that we'll look to cut and re-sign. Fonte, second best, and then obviously these guys had some issues. Obviously Francis Peter was our worst. Yeah, and that really showed because our right side was very weak off that edge, along with Creston Cooper, who had played pretty terribly throughout, and then Charles Clark off that left end didn't play very well at all. But 9 sacks through 600 snaps, still not probably not even close to the worst in the league. We'll actually see who gave up the most sacks in the league. Yeah, 19 on the Rams, and there's a lot of people that are over 10, so 9 not being terrible. Obviously, it's the worst on our team, but not being terrible as an overall. And that's through 1,000. This is through, I guess this is through 1,000 snaps. We'll see who had the most. So yeah, 15 through 960 is terrible. We'll see some guy up here only had 700 and he gave up 11, so not terrible. Obviously, in terms of sacks, we definitely ranked up here. Noah Dawkins with an outstanding 56 sacks, and he should be taking home that MVP. Mark Fields also outstanding at that safety position, 35. Dan with a 28, following quickly behind him. And then Ross Blacklock with 18.5. That's really good. Along with Derek Brown. A lot of young guys up here. Julian Okora. Then obviously Aaron Donald. But in terms of just our team, we finished with a ton of sacks this season, obviously leading the league by a pretty big margin, I would assume. Jefferson also getting 5.5 in his first season with us. Troy doing 4. With Harvey coming back for his second year with 2.5. And then Jordan Evans with a full, and then Nazir with a half. So overall, pretty good. We can look at the interceptions on this team. LB Melifonwu almost doubled the next guy, having 9, Greg having 5, Malik having 1, Willie having 1, and Greg having 1. So pretty good interceptions on this team, obviously, out of our first 2 guys. A good amount of defensive touchdowns. We can actually see forced fumbles here as well. Mark Fields forcing 4 fumbles. That's insane for a safety. Dan forcing 1 as well. And we probably only recovered 4 out of 5. That's pretty good. Recovering 4 to 5, that's pretty good. Obviously, that 68-yard touchdown by Willie Harvey, outstanding. I don't think we had any blocked kicks on the season, no, but we probably had a couple safeties. Malik and Austin Johnson out of that D tackle, both causing a safety. If we look at defensive touchdowns, Obi had 2 off picks, I would assume. Yeah, he didn't have any fumble recoveries. And then Willie with that one off that 68-yard touchdown, and Greg Storman off a pick for a touchdown. So really good defensive play. Oh, stud of the season right here. Jonathan Brown finishing the regular season with 17 made field goals out of 17 attempts, which should net him an award for best kicker in the NFC. 100% on that. 54 long, which isn't terrible. We honed in on his range, made sure that he was only kicking with the wind, never against it. And obviously 97% on extra point percentage. Now we can go look and see if anybody else finished perfect on the season. I know the Ravens kicker was up there for a while. Actually, let's just go to percentage. Yeah, Justin Tucker actually finished perfect on the season as well. And he also missed a PAT. But yeah, we did about twice as good as Justin Tucker in terms of field goals. He kicked a little bit longer, probably the longest of the season. Yeah, with 62. In terms of extra point percentage, we were right up there with the best of them. A lot of perfects this year. And then obviously got Justin Tucker there, and then Jonathan Brown there. Nobody missed under 94%, which is outstanding. Nobody missed more than 2. Looks like. So really, really amazing season for kickers. Nobody missed more than 2 extra points. So really good all year. Kick return, we'll see if we're up in these stats. You can see Emmanuel Hall had 1 for 0 yards. And then Jedrick had 1 for 1 yard. But in terms of our starter, we'll see where he ranks. Khalifa Raymond actually ranking decently here, about mid of the pack with a touchdown as well. We'll see how he ranks in the averages. Yeah, he's about average as well. Around 15 or 20. And a lot of these are very, very close. So yeah, so probably in the back half, but all these are like 20, 23. There's a lot of people that didn't average anything over 23. About half the league didn't average over 23. See who had touchdowns. Nobody had over 1 touchdown, with Khalifa Raymond getting 1. Obviously the longest was about 99 yards, Ito Smith. We'll see who finished first in yards. Josiah Scott, which is actually bad for their team. That means that their opposer scored a lot of touchdowns, with the high on kick returns being 34, and ours is probably down around 10 or 15. Khalifa Raymond having 23. How's that work, actually? We get at least 1 a game. So 16. So that means we only gave up 7 scores that led to a kickoff. So that's pretty good. And then obviously, yeah, having one of the longer kicks up here, top 4, top 5. And then punt return, we had probably the best punt returner in the game. Khalifa Raymond having 11 more punt returns, which is actually, you want this number to be high, which means you forced a lot of punts. Khalifa Raymond having about 30% more than anybody else. KJ Hamler second in that. 490s probably way over, yeah, almost over double anybody else's. Tyreek Hill being second, and he's like the fastest dude in the league. We'll see who averaged the most. Khalifa averaged the most. I don't know, probably at least 1. Nobody returned a punt all year for a touchdown. Sadness. Tyler Lockett was the longest, Khalifa Raymond being the second with 26. So very consistent, averaging 14, and then his long being 26. Almost 500 this year, which would put him in the Pro Bowl in any other year. But seeing as how it's we want to go to the Super Bowl, hopefully he doesn't make the Pro Bowl. That would mean that we failed. We can see some team stats here. Defensive yards, we gave up the least. We only allowed 19th in points allowed, or we scored 19th in points allowed. We gave up defensively the least amount in the league, first in defensive yards. And now we can take a look at the yearly awards to wrap this segment up. Obviously, Noah Dawkins finishing with the MVP, having an outstanding almost 60 sack season, which is like triple the record right now in real life. Having nobody else finishing top 10. Mark Fields was in the top 10 for a while, but he fell out. Patrick Mahomes finishing third. Lamar obviously finishing second. He had an amazing season as well. Coach of the Year, obviously we went undefeated, so it was unquestionable whether we were going to be Coach of the Year or not. Then taking a look at the NFC Offensive Player of the Year, we did not qualify with anybody in the top 10. Obviously, Defensive Player of the Year would be Noah Dawkins, followed by Mark Fields, and then Dan Chisena. Offensive Rookie of the Year, we didn't finish with anybody there. Along with Defensive Rookie of the Year, we didn't have a whole lot of rookies on this team this year. On the defensive or offensive side of the ball, and the only offensive rookies we had were linemen, so they don't usually qualify for that unless they have an outstanding season. And the only person I could think that might have won that award would be Quentin Nelson, offensive line for the Colts. But even still, I would doubt he would win. Best quarterback are actually, we finished top 20, I guess. Jacob Eason, we finished 9th in the NFC. 9th isn't terrible. A lot better than last year, I would say. Running backs, we probably didn't finish with anybody in there. We kind of switched up at about halfway through the year who our starting running back was going to be. Also, we didn't give our running back a whole lot of touches this season. Our offense was kind of led most dominated by tight ends and wide receivers. In terms of wide receivers, obviously Steven Sims finishing with the best stats in terms of receiving yards and touchdowns. No question that he would be the number one receiver for either division. He's probably the best receiver in the NFL right now. Offensive line, we didn't have anybody finish in the top 10, and I assumed we won it. Defensive line, we didn't have anybody finish in the top 10. It's not really a big focus of this team to have outstanding defensive line play. As long as we can get good run stoppers, that's about all I look for there. Obviously, linebackers, Noah Dawkins running away with linebacker position in all defensive stats, with nobody else making the linebacker list there. DB, defensive backs, Obi Melifonwu leading the league in interceptions and return yards and probably touchdowns. Will win that for the NFC this year, which I'm proud. I think he's already on a long-term deal, so I'm proud that he'll be winning that and he'll have a chance to get leveled up, and we'll actually deal with that in a second. Greg Stroman finishing one of the best lockdown corners at 95 overall now, finishing top 5 there with nobody else making the cut, just our top 2 cornerbacks. Obviously Jonathan Brown winning kicker of the year, as he should with the amazing season that he's had. AFC, I would assume it's Justin Tucker. Yeah, Justin Tucker, and it's probably not even close in either of these. So yeah, now we have one of the best kickers in the NFL playing he's playing the best right now for us. That'll do it for the awards part. We'll see some records. I guarantee we broke some season records. Defensively, receiving yards, J.J. Nelson got up there last year. He didn't get up there this year. Touchdowns. Let's go for a game first off. None broken there. None broken for touchdowns. Definitely not rushing yards or rushing touchdowns. But receiving yards, J.J. Nelson got up there last year. Hall got up there last year. Nobody else making the list this year. And nobody for receiving touchdowns or catches, I would assume. But defensive sacks, Noah Dawkins getting 10 this year, 8 last year. 7 for the us this year as well. He's been in this list a lot, so he owns about half these records. 5 of the 10 for the highest sack games. A lot of those coming this year, having his X factor. Defensive picks, I doubt anybody would get up there. D-Hall getting up there in 2010. Season-wise, definitely didn't break any of these. Receiving yards probably were up on this list. J.J. Nelson getting on there last year. I'm surprised Steven Sims was close. He had over 1,600 yards. Almost making that list. In terms of touchdowns, was quite close as well with 15. Doubt anybody would break that record. That would be super insane. Noah Dawkins obviously broke this record with 58.5 sacks this season. Broke it last year. Mark Fields got on this list. Dan got on this list last year. Greg got on that list last year. He was actually a safety for us last year in the same position that Mark kind of plays. But now he's our star lockdown cornerback. Dan getting up there this year as well. So we own about, what is that, 6 of the top sack records over the last 2 years. In terms of picks, I doubt anybody would get up there this year. It's a hard list to get on. Obviously, Obi Melifonwu was close with 9. Actually, I wonder if Noah Dawkins is close on this list for career sacks. 200 is the record. That's outstanding. And at like over, I think he's got 90 something. He'll quickly get on that list within the next couple of years. Now we can go to the final segment, which is upgrading the players, doing the weekly training, and see who leveled up this season. Definitely Noah Dawkins should have some upgrade points, and a few players as well who had outstanding seasons. I would obviously look for Obi Melifonwu to go up to at least 80 overall with the season he's had. And we'll take a look here. Dan getting up to 90 overall going into next season. Manuel getting up to 82. Grant getting up to 80. Close to 80. 79, 78, 77. KJ getting up to 75. We'll see which players. And this back end, Steven Sims getting up to 88. So he's almost at that 90. And with the morale boost, he is at 90. But that won't give him his second rating. He's still at Superstar after this season. He's got that post flag elite and is pretty close to unlocking his second Superstar ability. Malik Jefferson, he'll go up to probably 70 overall. Very close. 70 overall. Obviously our kicker will upgrade the accuracy for him to make him a little bit more accurate with the wind. I'll probably just give him a 2 kick accuracy. So he'll get a little bit more accurate even though he's already a stud. And nobody else getting any more upgrades. That's outstanding. That's a little underwhelming. I figured some people would have more than that. And we can actually see if we want to spend any of these coaching upgrades real quick before we wrap up this episode of the regular season recap. We'll actually deal with that after the Super Bowl. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. Going into the playoffs, we could actually see who our playoff matchup will be for next week at the end of this video. Seeing who made it past the bye week, we'll actually be facing the 10-6 Atlanta Falcons in the divisional round. So look forward to that video coming out. Thanks for liking, thanks for subbing, and thanks for support.
Yeah, Lord Phaser in this bitch. Yeah, yeah.